Life-changing homemaking secrets I learned from Farmer Boy from the Little House on the Prairie series, Part 2. Welcome back to the Daily Connoisseur. My name is Jennifer, and I have been exploring Laura Ingalls Wilder's Little House on the Prairie book series and taking the most amazing homemaking secrets that I could find from those books and sharing them with you. If you haven't seen the first video in the series, that discusses all of the tips I gleaned from the Little House series in its entirety. But Farmer Boy is a book in the series that is so full of homemaking inspiration that I had to break up this book alone into 2 parts. So this is the second part. I will leave both of the episodes from this discussion in the description box down below, as well as in the iCards up above. But let's jump right in with part 2 of Farmer Boy. I have 10 more tips for you, plus a bonus observation that I found to be very funny, so you're going to want to stay till the end for that one. We ended off on homemaking secret number 10 last time, so let's go to life-changing homemaking secret number 11. They were not afraid to use technology when it suited them. So let's have a look here in Farmer Boy in the chapter called Cold Snap, page 164. Father hauled the fleeces to the carding machine in Malone and brought home the soft, long rolls of wool, combed out straight and fine. Mother didn't card her own wool anymore since there was a machine that did it on shares, but she dyed it. Okay, so this is just a little sentence here, but it shows that they were willing when new technologies came through to actually switch to the new technology if it made their life better. So most people might be thinking, well, of course, isn't that what everybody does? But actually, I looked at my own homemaking journey, and there were several new technologies that I was very resistant to try. And I think a lot of us can be like that. When something new comes out on the market, we think, really? Do I really need this? Shouldn't I just do it the old-fashioned way? And then once we introduce the technology to our lives, a lot of the times our lives are improved. And that is certainly the case with homemaking. Here are some examples of new technologies that have come out in homemaking that people might be resistant to. Number 1, a bread making machine. A lot of people make bread by hand. I make bread by hand. I don't have a machine, but I know a lot of people who have a bread machine, and they say that it just changes everything and that it's so easy for them to make bread, and they end up making bread more often because they have a machine and it's so much easier for them. So I actually don't have a bread machine, but I'm considering getting one because I don't make bread as often, just because it is a very time-consuming all-day process for me. So I do make it, but then I kind of burn out on it, you know? But if I had a machine, I might make bread a little bit more. Another example is a robot vacuum. I always kind of wanted a robot vacuum, but I just thought, well, you know, it's probably more trouble than it's worth, right? Then I reviewed one on my channel a long time ago, and I cannot tell you how much I love my robot vacuum. It completely has changed me and helped me for the better with my homemaking routine. I use it about every other day, and it just goes around and does all the hard work for me. So things like that, little technologies like that. I have a lot of friends in other countries who don't have a clothes dryer, and I knew one person in particular who they never had a clothes dryer, and they always hung their clothes up to dry, and they thought, why would I need a clothes dryer? And then they ended up getting one, and they realized how much it changed their lives. So even today, sometimes we can be a little bit stubborn in thinking that a new technology isn't necessarily going to help us that much, and then we're truly amazed when we realize how much it does help us. So if there is a homemaking technology that has really changed your life that you resisted for a long time, let us know in the comment section down below. Life-changing homemaking secret number 12, they made their own household necessities. Now you're thinking, well, I thought you said to embrace technology. That definitely has its place, but there is also a place for us to discover the lost art of making our own household necessities. So I'm going to show you a few examples here of what Almanzo and his family did. Mother was making soft soap too. All the winter's ashes had been saved in a barrel. Now water was poured over them, and lye was dripping out of the little hole in the bottom of the barrel. Mother measured the lye into a cauldron and added pork rinds and all the waste pork fat and beef fat that she had been saving all winter. The cauldron boiled, and the lye and the fat made soap. Almanzo could have kept the bonfires burning. He could have dipped the brown, slimy soap out of the cauldron and filled the tubs with it, but he had to go to school. So this is talking about how Almanzo actually loved staying home and helping with these jobs. We're going to talk about that in a future homemaking secret. Almanzo's mother made her own soap. Let's see what else she made. This is in the chapter called The Fall of the Year. The end of butchering time was candle making. Mother scrubbed the big lard kettles and filled them with bits of beef fat. Beef fat doesn't make lard, it melts into tallow. While it was melting, Almanzo helped string the candle molds. A candle mold was 2 rows of tin tubes fastened together and standing straight up on 6 feet. There were 12 tubes in a mold. They were open at the top but tapered to a point at the bottom, and in each point there was a tiny hole. Mother cut a length of candle wicking for each tube. She doubled the wicking across the small stick and twisted it into a cord. She licked her thumb and finger and rolled the end of the cord into a sharp point. When she had 6 cords on the stick, she dropped them into 6 tubes, and the stick lay on top of the tubes. The points of the cords came through the tiny holes in the points of the tubes, and Almanzo pulled each one tight and held it tight by sticking a raw potato on the tube's sharp point. When every tube had its wick held straight and tight down its middle, Mother carefully poured the hot tallow. She filled every tube to the top. Then Almanzo set the mold outdoors to cool. When the tallow was hard, he brought the mold in. He pulled off the potatoes. Mother dipped the whole mold quickly into boiling water and lifted the sticks. 6 candles came up on each stick. Then Almanzo cut them off the stick. He trimmed the ends of wicking off the flat ends, and he left just enough wicking to light on each pointed end, and he piled the smooth, straight candles in waxy white piles. All one day, Almanzo helped Mother make candles. That night, they had made enough candles to last till butchering time next year. So this shows how mother and son got together to make candles for the entire year. And this is a very involved process. But for me, it was very inspiring to think about the things that I could potentially learn how to make myself. We rely so much on convenience from stores, and that is absolutely fine, but there must be something deeply satisfying about making your own candles, making your own soap. So it got me thinking about potentially learning how to do these things myself. Life-changing homemaking secret number 13. The children actually looked forward to the housework and the farm work more than they actually did school. Now, this isn't necessarily a tip or a secret, but what it does show is that home life was so enjoyable and children were taught the pleasure of hard work and the satisfaction that comes with it so much that they actually enjoyed it more than going off to school. So let's read here from the chapter called Cold Snap. Day after day he worked till all the pumpkins were planted, and then he begged to hoe and thin the carrots. Notice that it says he begged to. He hoed all the weeds away from the long rows, and he pulled the little feathery carrot tops till those that were left stood 2 inches apart. He did not hurry at all. No one had ever taken such pains with carrots as he did, because he didn't want to go back to school. He made the work last till there were only 3 more days of school. Then the spring term ended, and he could work all summer. So it says here that he wanted to prolong this work because he actually enjoyed doing it. So just imagine that. Just imagine your children prolonging the housework, wanting to do more housework so that they didn't have to do school. And then it says he was looking forward to the spring term ending, and then he could work all summer. He was actually looking forward to working. So this seems very foreign to us. We are used to our children wanting to get out of school, of course, but usually they want to play with friends or watch a video game or do something like that. They don't actually want to do manual labor, physical work, cleaning up the house, pulling carrots, pulling weeds, that type of thing. So I just think that this really speaks to the atmosphere of the home where the children were really invested in the pleasure that comes from a hard day's work. Homemaking secret number 15. They worked hard and they played hard. But of course the work came first. So we're in the chapter called Summertime, and it says, Then Almanzo drank a mug of acid, creamy buttermilk and ate cookies while Mother skimmed out the grainy butter and washed it in the round wooden butter bowl. She washed every bit of buttermilk out of it. Then she salted it and packed the firm golden butter in her butter tubs. Fishing wasn't the only summer fun. Some July evening, Father would say, All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Tomorrow we'll go berrying. Almanzo didn't say anything, but inside he was all one joyful yell. It goes on to describe how much fun they have picking berries and the crazy incidents that happen there. But that just goes to show that when Father says that, that's a very common phrase, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. It goes to show that this wasn't always hardship. It wasn't always hard, heavy work, all work and no play. They definitely mixed it up, especially in this family, with doing really fun things, going sledding and all of that, mixed with really, really hard work. I know for a fact that you can enjoy the playtime more if you've worked hard beforehand and for it. If you're just constantly playing, especially as a child, if your life consists of just one constant leisurely vacation and you don't know what hard work is, you're not going to appreciate that playtime. Also, I would like to note that the playtime that they did have was still work. So they're talking about berrying, picking berries. They're picking berries for them to eat. I mean, this is still a chore. It's just a fun one that they really enjoyed. Life-changing homemaking secret number 16. They didn't waste anything. Let's have a look again at what I just read you about the buttermilk. It says, Mother skimmed out the grainy butter and washed it in the round wooden butter bowl. She washed every bit of buttermilk out of it. Then she salted it. So it says she washed every bit of buttermilk out of it. There are actually several examples all throughout the book about how they would use every last drop of something. Now, this is something that I struggle with a lot. I do not scrape the last bits out of anything. I don't know, I can be kind of wasteful in that sense, and it's something that I'm always trying to work on. I have a very good memory of one of my French friends, Emmanuelle, who lived next to me in Santa Monica for a period of 6 months, and I got to know her so well, and this is a remarkable woman. And she would teach me how to cook. She would teach me different things. And I remember cooking with her one afternoon, and I was so impressed. I think we were making a pear tart, and she was just scraping every last bit out of that bowl, and to the point where I'm thinking, okay, we could put the bowl in the sink now, but she got every last scrap out of that. And that is so important. It's important to be frugal and to waste nothing. And it's important to just have that mentality in the first place, because if you have that mentality with the little things, like what you're making in the kitchen, the buttermilk, you're going to have that mentality with the big things as well. So that's something that I have to work on. I know in one of my homemaking videos, I was making cookies and everyone was horrified that I didn't lick the spoon before I put it in the sink. Well, first of all, I wouldn't have done that because the eggs were raw. But I could have definitely scraped more of that off the paddle into the cookie bowl, because you're just wasting it at that point. So I can definitely work on not being so wasteful. Number 17, they took pride in their home, and they took pride in keeping it nice and looking good. So let's have a look here in the chapter called Keeping House. And to preface this, the parents had left for a little while and the children were alone, and there was an incident that happened in the parlor, which I'll get to later on. But for right now, let's just read this little paragraph here. Alonzo heard Mother saying, "Come right into the parlor." He couldn't move. He could not speak. This was worse than anything he had thought of. Mother was so proud of her beautiful parlor. She was so proud of keeping it always nice. She didn't know he had ruined it, and now she was taking company in. They would see that big black splotch on the wall. Again, we're going to get to what happened there in just a sec. But here, her son is saying he knows his mother is proud of their beautiful house, their beautiful parlor. She's proud of keeping it nice. And so there's that expression, house proud, and it could have a negative connotation. People who are house proud might just think too much about their house. Maybe they're so concerned with keeping it clean and how it looks that they forget other things in their lives, or that it's not the most important thing to have a spotless house. Now, I struggle with this, and I know a lot of parents, especially with young children, do as well, because I used to be quite house proud, and before we had kids, our house was always just immaculate. Then with each child, the standards dropped a little bit more, because it is very hard, especially when you have little ones, toddlers, babies. It's really hard to keep things in check. But I do think that it is important to maintain that, to just not let yourself completely go with the house, but to have a sense of pride about keeping your house nice. And notice that they're talking about the parlor here in particular. The parlor was their nice room that they received guests in. So we can have at least one room in our home that we do feel really proud about and that we do keep it up on a regular basis so that if company comes over, we can usher them into the parlor, or in our case, it would be the piano room. Just a room that's always kept nice and that can give you that sense of happiness and pride, even if the rest of the house is a complete tip. Let's also look at the chapter called Birthday, page 56. They ate at the table in the kitchen because there was no company today. The kitchen was bright with the glitter of snow outside. The floor and the tables were scrubbed bone white with lye and sand. The tin saucepans glittered silver, and the copper pots gleamed gold on the walls. The tea kettle hummed, and the geraniums on the windowsill were redder than Mother's red dress. I love this description of the kitchen and how pleasing and pleasant it was. It wasn't a complete disaster. It was actually scrubbed and polished and shiny, and just the way she describes this right here makes you just want to go scrub your kitchen. Makes me want to actually scrub my tea kettle and my copper pots. So clearly they took pride in every room in the house, including the kitchen. I just want to say, if you hear a background noise, that's my oven, and I'm cooking carnitas right now in the oven. So if you hear noises, that's what that is. Number 18, the kids knew when they needed to hustle. So this paints a very familiar scene. The parents went away for a week and the kids were left alone, and they goofed off all week. They did things that they shouldn't have done, which I think is pretty universal even back in Almanzo's time. I have a very funny story about what happened with my sister and I the first time my parents left us. It's something I have never forgotten. But first, let's have a look to see what happened here. It seemed that a week would last forever, but suddenly it was gone. One morning at breakfast, Eliza Jane said, "Father and Mother will be here tomorrow." They all stopped eating. The garden had not been weeded, the peas and beans had not been picked, so the vines were ripening too soon. The hen house had not been whitewashed. Now, it goes on to say everything they did. This, of course, is not unusual. It's very normal for children to hustle right before the parents get home, but they really hustled and they worked so hard all day. So let's see what they did. They all went to work as hard as they could. Royal and Almanzo hoed the garden, they whitewashed the hen house, they cleaned the cow stalls and swept the south barn floor. The girls were sweeping and scrubbing in the house. Eliza Jane made Almanzo churn till the butter came, and her hands flew while she washed and salted it and packed it in the tub. There was only bread and butter and jam for dinner, though Almanzo was starved. So they are really hustling. I mean, they are doing absolutely everything. And they do work really hard to make the house absolutely perfect for their parents. There's a similar story in Little House on the Prairie. I'm not sure what book it is. I can't remember it right now, but where they do the same thing. They really go the extra mile to make the house really nice for when the parents come back. There is an incident in here where Almanzo fights with his sister and ends up staining the parlor wall. That's what we talked about in the other one. So I have a very funny story about the first time my parents left my sister and I for one night. They just went out to dinner, and we were old enough to be left alone. My sister is 5 years older than me, so she was able to watch me, but I vividly remember this. My sister and I got into a fight over something, and we were holding a mustard jar of bright yellow mustard, and we were fighting with the mustard jar. We were going back and forth. I can't remember what happened. The mustard jar ended up opening and squirting all over my mother's light gray carpet. And I just remember staring at it in horror. We both were just looking at it in absolute horror. So horrified that this happened. I mean, picture bright yellow mustard on a light gray carpet. And we just spent the rest of the time trying to get that mustard out. It was such a nightmare. I can't even remember what happened. I was traumatized. I was crying. My parents forgave us, but anyway, it certainly was a spectacle. So I related to what happened with Almanzo in the parlor when he got into a fight with his sister with that on the wall. I think it's pretty universal. Let's have a look though here in the chapter called Fall of the Year. And it talks about, we're talking about hustling and the children knowing when to hustle. And here is a little vignette of all of the children helping their mother in the kitchen. All the next week, Mother and the girls were hard at work, and Mother kept Almanzo in the kitchen to help. They cut up the pork fat and boiled it in big kettles on the stove. When it was done, Mother strained the clear hot lard through the white cloths into the big stone jars. Crumbling brown cracklings were left inside the cloth after Mother squeezed it, and Almanzo sneaked a few and ate them whenever he could. Mother said they were too rich for him. She put them away to be used for seasoning cornbread. Then she made the head cheese. So it just goes on to describe a very elaborate kitchen process in here. There's so many of these throughout this book. It's so interesting. But I love that the mother involves the children, not only the girls, but the boys as well. Life-changing homemaking secret number 19, supper time was a cheerful time for bonding. Let's have a look here at the chapter called The Strange Dog. It says, supper time was not as cheerful as usual. There was a dark, heavy feeling about that money. So they have a lot of money in the house and mother is afraid. She doesn't know where to put it. And it's quite interesting what happens there. But notice that sentence. It says, supper time was not as cheerful as usual. This indicates that their regular supper time was very cheerful. And it was. All of the vignettes in this book about supper time are usually good. They're all eating delicious food, a lot of it in abundance. They are cheerful and talking, and it's just a very pleasant home atmosphere where they can bond over dinner. So our family definitely believes in bonding over meals. I know a lot of modern homes, people eat separately, maybe in their own room, in front of a computer or in front of the TV or something like that. But it's so important to have those bonding traditions so that if a meal is a little off and it's not cheerful, you notice it, because that's not the norm. Let's have a look here at page 325 in the chapter called Christmas. At last, Almanzo's plate was filled. The first taste made a pleasant feeling inside him, and it grew and grew while he ate and ate and ate. He ate till he could eat no more, and he felt very good inside. For a while, he slowly nibbled bits from his second piece of fruitcake. Then he put the fruity slice in his pocket and went out to play. So it just shows the warm, pleasant feelings that children associate with meal times, especially special meals like Christmas. But I recently got back into really meal planning, and if you have seen my meal planning videos, you know this. I'm really into cooking right now. I had a long time of burnout from it, but now I'm back, and I do see how much your children appreciate it. They really appreciate a good meal. It'll build really strong memories for them and also feelings of happiness and security. You know, these pleasant feelings that Almanzo, it said that the pleasant feeling inside of him grew and grew. So I do believe that that's an accurate description. Adults, children, we all love good food. We love feeling pleasant after having a good meal. So that's something to encourage us in our meal planning journey. Life-changing homemaking secret number 20. Children were given big responsibilities, and their abilities were not underestimated. So this is all throughout the entire series, really. But let's look at chapter 11 here, springtime. Now breakfast was eaten before dawn. The sun was rising beyond the dewy meadows when Almanzo drove his team from the barns. He had to stand on a box to lift the heavy collars onto the horses' shoulders and to slip the bridles over their ears, but he knew how to drive. He had learned when he was little. Father wouldn't let him touch the colts nor drive the spirited young horses, but now that he was old enough to work in the fields, he could drive the old, gentle work team, Bess and Beauty. So the whole book really shows their parents trusting Almanzo with really big tasks that I'm not sure we would trust our own children with today. Now, it is important as parents to have a very strong sense of what is actually safe. We don't want to give our children jobs and tasks that are way beyond their capacity. But at the same time, I think a lot of us underestimate what children can do. And especially with housework, this is true. So I have a 1-year-old and he loves to clean. He's only one. I give him the window cleaner and a little rag and I say, can you please clean the windows? And he goes up to our sliding glass door, which every day has major fingerprints on it, and he will clean that thing. Of course, he doesn't do the best job, but the fact is that he's only 1. He's not even 2 yet, and he is able to attempt at least to clean a window. So a lot of the times we underestimate our children's abilities. My daughters, when they want to do something, and I'll say, okay, can you please tidy up the living room? I like to say style the sofas because our sofas get really, they just get really messy. Anyway, my daughters will get in there and they will do it quickly and they will do it well. Or if one of them is assigned to clean the powder room or the guest bathroom, again, they can do it really well. So Homemaking shouldn't just be mom slaving away after everybody, nagging and complaining and whining while everyone else just lays down and does nothing, right? We need to involve our family, and it's very important with our children to not underestimate their abilities. That concludes our homemaking secrets from the book Farmer Boy, but I wanted to end with a little bonus observation that I had that really made me laugh. We are in the chapter called Christmas, so just have a listen to this and then I'll tell you what I think. The sun rushed up the sky. Mother was everywhere, talking all the time. Almanzo, wash your ears. Goodness, mercy, royal, don't stand around underfoot. Eliza Jane, remember you're paring those potatoes, not slicing them. And don't leave so many eyes they can see to jump out of the pot. Count the silver, Alice, and piece it out with the steel knives and forks. The best bleached tablecloths are on the bottom shelf. Mercy on us, look at that clock. Sleigh bells came jingling up the road, and Mother slammed the oven door and ran to change her apron and pin on her brooch. Alice ran downstairs, and Eliza Jane ran upstairs. Both of them told Almanzo to straighten his collar. Father was calling Mother to fold his cravat. Then Uncle Wesley's sleigh stopped with a last clash of bells. Almanzo ran out whooping, and Father and Mother came behind him as calm as if they had never hurried in their lives. This is so funny and so relatable. All homemakers know when company is coming over, the stress is high. I don't care who you are. Even Almanzo's mother, who was homemaker extraordinaire, experienced this. So they were having company coming over for Christmas, and right beforehand, she is flipping out. She's telling all the kids to do this and that and this and that. And then as soon as they get there, she's as calm as a cucumber. I could relate to this, and I was just laughing so much. It made me feel better about myself because I do this too, right before company's coming over. I mean, I am directing, I am doing things, and we are running around scrambling. And then when they get there, I'm calm. There's two very funny comedy videos on YouTube. I think the first one is from Chris Fleming, and the second one is from Trey Kennedy, who's one of my favorite comedians. And I can maybe link those down below if I remember. They're basically making fun of moms when company's coming over and how they absolutely flip out, and then at the very end, they are very calm. So I think this is a very universal thing, and it's totally normal, and it made me happy to realize that I wasn't alone. I truly hope that you enjoyed this series where I broke down the life-changing homemaking secrets from the Little House on the Prairie books. These books by Laura Ingalls Wilder are full of so much information about what life was like back then, especially with homemaking. I hope that you enjoyed this series. If you do, please give it a thumbs up, and I hope that you will consider subscribing to my channel, where I like to give you homemaking inspiration every single week. I would love to know what your favorite tip is from this entire series. What have you implemented into your own home? Thank you so much for joining me today on The Daily Connoisseur, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!